Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session on aligning projects with strategy. And my name's David Warner. I'm with the PPM marketing team at CA. I'm very pleased to introduce Russell Nelms from Toyota Financial Services of Australia. This is going to be a really valuable session for you. What he's going to be talking about is aligning projects with strategy, which is ultimately where almost all of our PPM customers want to get to. They want to do what Russell is doing at Toyota Financial Services of Australia. So I think this is going to be a great presentation. One note is that it's a 30-minute presentation. Russell has a lot of material to go through, so there likely won't be time for Q&A here on the stage, but what we're going to do is Russell is going to step off to the side at the end, and you're all welcome to come up and answer any question or ask any questions of him afterwards. So I think without any further ado, Russell Nelms of Toyota Financial Services of Australia. Welcome.
Thank you, Dave. All right, thank you very much, Dave. And as Dave said, my name is Russell Nelms, and I'm the head of the Enterprise PMO for Toyota Financial Services in Australia. Just by way of background, I've been in Australia now for about 15 years. Prior to coming to Australia in 2001, I had 11 years as an officer in the US Army, primarily with a strategy background. So going into Australia, my first job was working with Aon. So Aon being a brokerage firm, they employed me to actually work with merging three entities. So Aon Risk Services, Aon Re, and Aon Holdings. Part of that role also entailed setting up corporate strategy or corporate planning, which I implemented in EPMO. I left there and went into a bank, St. George Bank, which at the time was the number 5 bank within Australia. Very similar, was the head of strategy and also the head of the enterprise PMO. After 4 years, St. George was acquired by the number 3 bank, Westpac, and I set up the transformation program and managed the merger between Westpac and St. George. Also in that role, set up the enterprise PMO, and from the success of that merger, I moved on into AMP, which is one of the leading wealth management firms in Australia, and worked with the integration of AMP and Axis, so the number 1 and number 2 wealth management firms. And again, set up an EPMO. I moved into Toyota Finance now about 14 months ago. So why is that all important? It's not about what I've done, but it's more that all those businesses have the same complications, and that is the delivering to a corporate strategy. Delivering and making sure they're actually delivering bottom line value to its shareholders and making sure they got a return on their investment. So I see my role and the role of the enterprise PMO is to actually enable that effective change management and the delivery of change across the portfolio to enable strategy. So my role specifically, I work with the group executive and the senior leadership team within Toyota to make sure that we're balancing our projects and our investments to deliver to that strategy. If we're doing it right, our projects will be able to actually support our business unit strategy, our annual plan, and in Toyota we call that a HOSHN, which then will also support our 5-year medium-term business plan. So when I came in about 14 months ago, I came in at a time that we were actually doing our annual review strategy. And I got called into running a number of workshops, or being involved with workshops on how are we going to deliver our strategy for next year. Getting information from Japan on what our top-down strategy is, and from our business units on what the bottom-up strategy was. Ironically, I got pulled into different workshops with some of the same people and some different people on what projects are we going to do and how we're going to prioritize our projects. I thought it was a bit interesting that we were somewhat successful in the delivery of projects, but there seemed to be a lack of integration or direction into how the projects are supporting that strategy. So my vision at that time was actually to be able to work with Toyota to make sure we could actually understand how the projects and the project portfolio could enable the strategy. And if we did it right, we would actually make sure we were doing the right projects and we were doing the right projects right. So I had 3 focuses. The number 1 focus was how we're going to govern our projects. So that's from a steering committee up through a governing body, we call it a project and change committee at Toyota Finance, through our executive committee, our strategy committee, and at the top to our board. How we're going to execute our projects, execution framework, and very importantly, a framework, not a methodology, a framework that you operate within. And then probably more importantly, how we're going to provide assurance, so the assurance for the framework. So to do that right, we need to also have the right structure in place. The structure that I inherited was a very flat structure. The PMO was a small analytical team that was actually had lag indicators providing information. The PMO was seen more of providing project resources. It was a very flat team. So the first thing that I did was put in a structure where I actually specifically called the title Project Portfolio Manager, and I brought in 4 of those roles, and I aligned them with the business units. And I ensured that it was a matrix reporting line. While the project portfolio managers had a hard line reporting into me, they had a dotted line reporting into the group executive running that business division. And it was really important because we needed to see those people as an extension of that business unit. So they were actually working hand in hand with the business strategists and the leadership team of those business units to help formulate their strategies and make sure what projects or investments they needed to have to actually deliver the strategies. And then at my level, then I would be working with our group executive and senior leaders to make sure that the corporate strategy was aligned as well. So saying that, we also needed the frameworks and the tools to support all of that. And that's where Clarity PPM did come into place. So I'd be wrong to not talk to you today and talk to you a little bit about Toyota Financial Services. So Toyota Finance, it is part of the global Toyota brand, and it's a very, very, very honored brand. It's the number 8 brand globally across the world. Toyota Financial Services' first firm was established in 1982 in Sydney, Australia, and soon was followed by the US, Japan, and Canada. And right now we actually have 30 offices globally around the world, and we support about 5.4 million customers. So Toyota Finance offers most banking and finance offerings. We offer retail finance, wholesale finance, fleet management, or leasing as we call it in the US, and other products. Within Toyota, and putting some of the frameworks we put in place, it was really important to understand the Toyota way. Probably everyone here would have heard of Kaizen or Toyota Business Practice, or TBP. TBP itself is probably a very lean version of Six Sigma, but it's a very deliberate approach on actually how you're going to break down a problem. And one of the things that when I came on board that the CEO and our group executives wanted to make sure is that the frameworks that I put in place, that we were embedding the Toyota way. That we were looking at continuous improvement from a Kaizen perspective, and we're also using TBP, the Toyota business planning process, to actually make sure that we're actually going down to root cause and understanding what our delivery should be and what the solution should be about. I'm sure everyone here has worked with business leaders that come in and say, this is what my solution is. But you actually haven't worked down what the business problem or the opportunity is. So at the highest level, TBP, you actually define your current situation, your ideal situation, and the gap. And if you do it right, you go through the 5 whys as you do with Six Sigma, and then you will define specific options or countermeasures to deliver to that problem or opportunity. And then if you do it right, then you'll be recommending the right solution or outcome. So we deliberately get the ideas and take the projects or the ideas through this process into a concept phase and make sure that we've actually defined what the business problem or opportunity is. And in some cases, it might be a business project. In some cases, it might be a business program with a number of projects. And in some cases, it might be a business project with an IT enabler. And I'm a firm believer there's no such thing as an IT project. They're all business projects. And in Toyota, I use an analogy that it's even a system upgrade. If it's a system upgrade working in a division, it's like you can choose if you're going to get the wheels on your car changed or not. But if you choose not to get those wheels changed and the wheel explodes, then you've chosen not to do that. So it's the same for that business leader. If they choose not to support that upgrade, then they're actually not supporting their business. So I insisted that when I took on this role, that any upgrades that the sponsor left was not part of technology. The sponsor was that parent division. So very similar to that process, when we looked at Clarity PPM, I needed to go through that same process. And the outcome was not that we were going with Clarity PPM at the time. It was really looking at the current state. So looking at those frameworks that we had in place and what we needed to have. From a system perspective, though, we did have a system already in place at Toyota. But the system did not provide the overview and the need of what we needed from a system. It didn't provide the analytics that we needed to provide from reporting. It had no ability to actually manage resources, and what I saw very early on in my time at Toyota Finance was the resource contention, both on the project side, looking at supply and demand, but more importantly, on the business SME. We had projects that we had people, when we really did the calculations, that would be at 150% utilization. And we clearly did not have any way to actually say, are we doing the right projects? From a prioritization perspective, we probably did the normal. What's the cost of the project or the idea? What's the benefit and what's the ROI? But we didn't take it down to the next level of what's the customer impact? What's the internal impact? What is the impact on our net promoter score? Are the customers actually wanting to buy more products through us? So being able to have that alignment and the ability to actually have lag indicators and lead indicators for predictive reporting, we knew that we had to define what the ideal state was that the gap was that we needed to put a tool in place to be able to provide that data. So putting a tool in place would be able to provide us the opportunity to say what projects we're doing, if they're the right projects, and as the Gartner research would show, and also even the Standards Group, that we have projects that are successful, challenged, or failed. But to manage it correctly, we need to put countermeasures in place. I try to challenge people that amber and red status for projects is actually a good thing, because you actually understand what's going wrong, and you put the right management attention, the management focus to determine, do we put countermeasures in place to put the project on track? Do we put the project on hold, or do we cancel the project to ensure that we're able to deliver the business outcomes, to actually ensure we deliver the strategy and the profit for the organization? So the first thing that I did was put in a framework. It's a framework that I've used in other organizations, but simplistically, this is an A3 laminate that we hand out. There's a lot of information behind it. But if you think about a project lifecycle and a governance an execution framework, at the highest level, you've got a number of governance documents, I'll call them. You have concept papers, you have business cases, and at the end of a project, you have a PIR. Embedding the Toyota way, I wanted to enforce that the business case was owned by the business sponsor. The outcomes of the project was owned by the business sponsor. The project manager, project director is accountable to delivering a certain level of activities to ensure the outcomes of the project. So at the end of the project, and as in most projects, we do a post-implementation review. One thing that we do differently here now in Toyota is we do a post-implementation review, and that is on how well we did the project and where we can actually learn. But then we also do we prepare a document called a Pdca. So from a Toyota perspective, Pdca, very simple: plan, do, check, act. And going through Kaizen and iteratively looking at how we can improve. So the general manager sponsor, the business sponsor of that project, then is required to come back to the governing forum to present his or her Pdca. So if you think they own the business case and the outcomes, the business case says, I'm going to spend $5 million and I'm going to get $10 million per annum of benefit. Based off of a number of factors. It could be the project, it could be the industry, it could be the market. It could end at the time and the general manager sponsor comes back and says, I can't deliver $10 million of benefits now, I can only deliver $8 million. That's at a point where you determine, is that good enough to move forward, or do we need to reinvest in that product? So it's really, really important that we actually have a point that we actually are soft booking those benefits at the beginning of that business case, and we're hard booking it at the Pdca, and we're divorcing to some degree the PIR on how well we did the project versus the Pdca, which needs to be the focus on how we're actually delivering the business outcomes. But again, they're related. The projects are actually how we're going to deliver the outcomes, which will be how we'll deliver the strategy. The second thing, and again, something that I've done in the past, is actually breaking the reporting keys. So the standard is, of course, you want to deliver projects on time, on budget, and on schedule. And if you look at the theoretical of what the standard says about a project being delivered on time and on budget and on schedule, means that you've actually delivered projects successfully. Some projects, though, I would challenge that if you deliver 10% over, and maybe 2 months later and deliver the full benefit of the project, I would actually say that standards by theory is wrong, or right, but by practice it's wrong, because you actually deliver the right thing for the organization. But you need the reporting, and you need the capability to be able to actually understand where you stand at any given time. So the 7 reporting keys that we have here are very objective. So as an example for schedule, if you deliver your schedule 10%, you're over 10%, you're amber in schedule. If you deliver over 15% schedule, then it's red. Same for cost, same for benefits. But it will still aggregate up to time, cost, and budget, time, cost, and schedule. The next piece is around the actual structure that we have in place. So from the steering committee up through our project and change committee, our strategy committee, and our board. And what you'll see here on the side is the enterprise PMO, myself, the portfolio managers on my team, and how we support all of those entities. We should be seen as a strategic advisor to those teams, providing a level of assurance that we are actually doing the right projects, we are doing the right investments to ensure the outcome of the organization. And lastly, the milestones. Again, related to the benefit outcome and the strategy. It's gold, silver, and bronze. So a normal project milestone is a bronze milestone. A silver milestone would be if you're looking at an Agile project, you've done a release. Or it could be that you've actually gone live with a particular system software. The gold milestone is the important milestone. That is when you're actually going to achieve the benefit. And that's what our group executive, our general manager sponsors are actually KPI'd on. So, a very simple slide, but what I try to do here is that if we look at this correctly, we have predictable execution at a project level, we have right organizational governance, that aligns to corporate strategy. We will make decisions throughout the year from an annual planning perspective, quarterly perspective, even a monthly perspective on what are the processes that we need to actually enable to ensure a predictive outcome. And that's around our strategy, and that's around the portfolio structure. Are we doing the right projects? And then predictive analysis on the right projects. Do we have the right frameworks in place? Capacity. So it's the same thing from capacity perspective. Do we have the right capacity within our projects? Do we have enough capacity to accept the change in the business? Do we have the capacity for our customers to accept the change as we're going out with the products? So for every single project, for every single initiative, we've got to take that in consideration, not just for the projects internally, but also for the strategy and for our customers and what we're delivering. So I mentioned that those gold milestones, that leaders are KPI'd. So from our CEO to the executives running our divisions, to the sponsors, project managers, and our project leaders, and even myself, we actually have KPIs around our delivery of our projects. And what we've done is that we've put a very simple process in place where our employees, at the end of the year, their performance review is based off of a 1 to 4 scale. And a 3 is that you've done your job. You've done your job really, really well. A 4 means you're exceeding your target, and a 2 and a 1 is that you're a bit challenged. So when I provided this proposal to the group executive, it says, well, why is a project delivery any different? If you deliver a project to time, you deliver a project to budget, and you deliver a project to scope, then it's a 3. And there was an agreement, and we understood what equated to a 4. So as I talked to you earlier on the reporting keys, if the schedule is delayed by 10%, it would be amber. Well, conversely here, if you actually deliver a project early, below budget, and over benefit, then it's a 4. Our CEO is KPI at 30% on the delivery of the portfolio and the strategic projects. Our sponsors are KPI'd on their individual project, and our business unit leaders are KPI'd on their portfolio. I'm also KPI on the portfolio. So you can see there that we have to have a score of 3 or higher for the project to be successful, and the portfolio, 85% of the projects have to have a 3 or higher. So how did CA PPM help us with this? So we had the frameworks in place, and we continue to improve, but we also needed to have a tool to enable our outcome. So we worked very closely with CA Technologies, and I've had experience with a number of implementations, a sponsor of actually a CA PPM in three times, and a couple of other tools as well. And the analogy I'd like to use in this place is that if you went to buy a smartphone, you went to buy an iPhone from Apple, you wouldn't go into the Apple store and say, I want the new iPhone, and I want the following functionality, and I don't want this functionality. You would have to assume that Apple's done the right research and development to provide you best practice on that smartphone. So why would not a tool such as CA PPM be any different? If CA Technologies has implemented this product in over 10,000 sites globally, and you've seen the pre-sales demo, and they say to you that it's best practice, why would you not hold them account and ensure they deliver best practice? I also needed to make sure that this tool, though, was implemented in a position where we're now in our annual review process, that it was in place that I could actually utilize this tool for project prioritization and making decisions for this next financial year. So I worked very hard with CA Technology. I was very forthright in my opinions, and we actually, from business case implementation, took us 3 months. Now, some of that was we did a SaaS implementation, which was very successful because we have the performance that we need in the SaaS implementation. But also we went through collaborative workshops with CA Technologies. I made sure that my diary was as free as possible and I was involved in those workshops. We wanted to keep it simple. So when the CA team came on board, we asked them to actually have the tool pre-configured to the pre-sales demo, and that we needed to prove the system wrong and change our processes to the tool. And you would all been involved in projects as well where you've had your business partners and you've probably told them the same thing. So why shouldn't we also adopt that same practice? Now, unfortunately, some of my staff, and I also had people from the business, had the business strategists, it was like kids in a candy shop. The moment they saw the capability and the rich data that you could pull out of Clarity, they said, well, I want that, and I want this, and I want that, and can you do this? And I had to slow things down and say, well, we needed to keep it simple. We wanted to have the right approach. And does the tool provide a 5x5 risk matrix? Yes. So why should we not adopt it? Ours might be a little bit different. And what we did was we did have some configuration, and we had some configuration that we went through that process and we prototyped, but we had no customization, and we actually did go live within 3 months. So we needed to make sure also that the tool was very tightly aligned with those frameworks that I mentioned earlier, and very tightly aligned to our strategy. So within CA PPM, our projects, of course, are within the tool. We then have vertical portfolios, so by our business divisions. And each business division at a program level, we actually have the business division strategy. So if you think at a program level, we've actually essentially just put milestones. So we need to have X% of product penetration by Q3, or we need to have sales up by 20% by Q4, as an example. And those projects then, as they have interrelated interdependencies, we can see that within the project, within the tool, we also have those interdependencies to that business unit strategy. And then we also, at the next level, we actually have our corporate strategy. And again, we have that by milestone based by quarter. And we have those interdependencies as well. So if we have a lag or any challenges or issues with any of our projects, we can see if there's any knock-on impact to the delivery of our strategy, and then ultimately the delivery of our profit. So at this point, we can actually say that I've been there now for 14 months. We are in a position where we have canceled projects, we have put projects on hold, and we've actually had projects that have gone through concept to business case and not approved. And I think that's a very healthy portfolio. And we've been able to do that because we've got the predictive analysis and the reporting that we have within the tool. We can actually say, over a number of elements in our prioritization, how is that specific project going to enable that strategy within that business division, and how is it going to enable that strategy for corporate? We can also say, well, it might be a number 1 priority for a business division, but it might be a number 12 priority for the organization. So it gets a lower ranking in the prioritization. So based off of funding, availability, capacity, processes, everything that I mentioned before, that project may not get forward at a particular time. So change management approach. So with CA PPM, when we decided it was time to deliver the tool, and we'd gone on a bit of a journey, we knew that we had to have an appropriate change management approach. I didn't want to have the normal classroom environment. I wanted to make sure, and I was very forthright in this as well, that it was interactive and it was fun. But I also needed to make sure I was managing from top down and bottom up. So with due respect to the group executives, we had a number of sessions with just the executive, and it was 2-hour sessions, and I titled them Executive Master Classes, and not to insult their intelligence. And we took them through the frameworks, how the frameworks could help them. We took them through the ePMO, Enterprise PMO, what our role was, what my role was, and how we could help them. And also that we're implementing this tool. And what I expected of them was that when they were sponsoring a project and the project manager was having the weekly project status report meeting with the sponsor, and I emphasize, and I know you are, that you ask the project manager to open up Clarity in front of you. And that when he or she is signing off on the status report, that they're doing it together. If there's challenges, so if there's issues or risks, that the project manager can drill down on the tool and actually then see what the issues and risks are. They can actually understand the interdependencies. There might be a risk from another project that's been raised against their project. They can understand it. It opens up collaboration. So again, awareness. I didn't want to insult their intelligence. But then at the next level down, we actually had business leaders, so our business strategists, our project leaders, our project managers, the portfolio managers, business analysts, and the like, and a number of sessions with CA Technologies. We had the tool up, and we ran sessions throughout the day. But what we decided to do was, rather than having, again, classroom style, we had everyone in tables, and we built people into teams. And everyone had a smartphone, and they were able to do live polling. So we actually did real-life examples. Some of those examples were projects going through a life cycle and the project hitting some challenges. Other times it was around going through prioritization of the portfolio. We actually then threw in information about how do you make a project amber or red? How do you actually bring a project from amber to green? And then certain times through the day, we ran quizzes. And then the table was able to actually then respond on what they thought the answers were. And I guarantee you, you put that competitive nature in a room with introverts and extroverts, you bring them together, they finish the day, and they've actually learned. They don't even realize that they've learned. So CA Technologies were there with us on that, and they supported us on-site and off-site through that process. And also, I've worked in a lot of organizations that every Friday you get this boring email, or you get an email of information that's 3 pages long, people look at it for 5 seconds and they delete it. So for our ongoing improvement, we've started sending messages out, and we send it out to the entire group every Friday, and you'll see some messages like here with Yoda, just trying to drive people into Kappa within CA PPM, and that the tool is intuitive enough, but here's where you can find more information. When the project managers need to get their financials in, we'll send something else out here like the Wolf of Pacific Highway. Our office is on Pacific Highway, so that's why we renamed that. But it's gimmicky. It makes people chuckle a bit, and it makes people remind them that they have to get their financials in. Then we do something else for timesheets. So rather than just having just a generic email going in saying, please put in your timesheets, or another generic email saying, please approve timesheets, we're trying to have a bit of fun along the way. And I guarantee you, again, putting that different change management approach, you can actually be a lot more successful. So, if you can take anything away today from my journey this last year, it's about the approach that we took. And I've got to say, it was a collaborative approach. It was a collaborative approach with my team, and not just my team within the enterprise PMO, but the expanded team within Toyota Finance. So we had the business strategists, as I said, involved, and our business leaders. But actually making sure that we had clarity, and the CA team specifically involved, up front. I actually, as a sponsor, had a clear vision of what I expected to be delivered, and I had that engagement and that endorsement from the leadership team. We wanted to make sure that the environment that we were working in with CA was collaborative, that it was one team. And through our workshops, we were working very closely together to make sure that we were balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses. I wanted to make sure also that the team was focused, they understood the scope, because we now have an opportunity for Kaizen. We can now improve. We got the tool in 3 months, because it can always get better, but if you wait for it to get better and better, you don't have it implemented. So we now have it implemented. And now we're working with CA Technologies to see where we can exploit the tool more from a reporting perspective. So I've got CA Technologies, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, coming back into my office to actually do some more work so we can actually learn how to use the tool even more. And if I boil that down to 3 things, best practice approach. Now, think about my analogy about the iPhone. And you need to hold people to account. So we have a proven product that's supposed to be designed off of best practice. Make sure that when you're working with the teams, that you actually do deliver best practice. Don't deliver the practice that you've had for 10 years because you think it's the right thing. Actually learn from conferences like this. Learn from partners and make sure you're actually implementing best practice. Change management approach. Have the right change management approach, okay? Make sure it's fun, it's interactive. A very poorly constructed project with good change management has a good chance for success. A very highly constructed project with poor change management has a high chance of failure. Okay? Lastly, BAU transition. Make sure you get a good transition plan in place. Have some funny gimmicks like I have. Make sure your team is trained. Make sure you've got the right support structure and the right frameworks in place to make sure you got ongoing improvement and ongoing Kaizen. So I think I'm about to run out of time, so as Dave said, I'll move over on the side here for any questions that you might have. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Russell. And so thank you. Yeah, exactly what Russell just said. I wanted to encourage you all to please join him to ask some questions here in the next few minutes. Also, while you're here, please go over to the demo pods that we have over here and talk to them about portfolio management. Ask for a demonstration of portfolio management and just exactly what Russell's been talking about. They would love to show you that, and it would be a great way to look forward to you doing that when you get back to your sites. So again, Russell, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.